Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to day 117. It's a happy new day, a great new day, and a day to rejoice. Why? Because our Creator woke you up this morning, woke me up this morning, breathed life into you this morning, breathed life into me this morning, because our Creator uses broken, wounded, and shattered people like you and like me to rescue wounded, shattered, and broken people like you and like me. So day 117 of the 12 steps applied to COVID-19 presented by the Free to Hope LLC. Free stands for From Recovery, Emerge Empowered. To do what? To give hope to others, help others prosper equally, while we as a human race simultaneously go through this COVID-19 pandemic. But there is a solution, and they are contained in the 12 steps that was created by the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous close to 90 years ago. But I've been a proud and humble and grateful member for 31 years, one day at a time, and practicing these principles in all my affairs, even now with COVID-19. Yes, to God be all the glory. So I don't represent Alcoholics Anonymous, but guess what? If you embrace, internalize, and apply and practice these 12 spiritual principles to any and all physical conditions, you can yet smile and you can yet have peace in the midst of the storm and even during this COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, so as of April the 1st of 2020, I set before you sharing my experience, my strength, my hope, and my wisdom of the 12 steps being applied to COVID-19 as a result of an article by Dr. Scott T. Allison on March the 31st of 2020, where he wrote a description and emphasized 7 points with the caption of "We can benefit from the wisdom of 12-step programs." And it was God who said, guess what, Edwina? The Holy Spirit is going to give you the strength, the courage, and you are going to be obedient. And on April the 1st, you're going to say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. Welcome to the Free to Hope presents the 12 steps to COVID-19. And it's been a year later as of today. So today is our 1 year anniversary. And God has kept me going and kept me sitting before you just to save one life, just to save one family, just to save one culture, just to save one community, one city, one state, one country. And if we all do this simultaneously and holistically, we can, we will, we must stop the perpetuation of this devastating pandemic called COVID-19, its effects, its impact, its outcome, and its fatalities. Yes, and so we know that with the Creator, He says, when I say it's enough, it will be enough. But in the meantime, you can do your part in saving the lives of your fellow human beings. I've provided the solution, and they are contained in the spiritual 12 steps that have been in existence for close to 90 years, but can be applied today and from here on out. This won't be the last pandemic, nor was it the first. So I suggest that you embrace these 12 spiritual principles and apply them to any physical conditions from a spiritual angle. Yes. So before we go any further, we want to give homage to our Creator, who knows the beginning, the middle, and the end, but also who provides a solution for those who are willing to not only listen, but to be obedient. Yes, obedient. I never was so obedient in all my life up until now. As a result of these 12 spiritual principles. So we want to give him 30 seconds in a moment of silence for all he has done, will do, and will continue to do as long as his children are on this earthly journey, and as long as his children are willing to recognize, yes, we need him, but he wants us to want him. And so until that happens, we will all go through this knee-bowing experience until such time every mouth will confess, to say that he is. He is. He is. Not was, he is and will continue to be Lord of us all. I'm so glad I yield and have been sitting before you on our 1-year anniversary. If Dr. J. Macklin was watching, if Dr. Mary Douglas was living, and my friend Sandy Anderson, who is watching, they are saying, Edwina, we did it. You yield and you have kept it going because it was only designed, so you thought, for just 30 days. But God said no. One day at a time, every day, until you continue to save just one of my children. So therefore, I want to ask you to join me in 30 seconds of a moment of silence to recognize our Creator, who says it ain't over till he says it's over. All right? But I also want to include in recognizing and giving homage to those of us who have transitioned from COVID-19, those who were left behind as a result of losing loved ones to COVID-19, those who are on their dying bed this very second, not knowing whether they're going to live or they're going to die a year later with this COVID-19. Those who have suffered through COVID-19 and yet live. Those who are still feeling the impact of COVID-19. Those who are intervening on behalf of those who have COVID-19, putting their lives at jeopardy and the lives of their family. Homage to them too. We want to pay homage for those who are doing the right thing when it comes to COVID-19 and stopping its perpetuation. And yes, we must include those who was like me at one time, defiant, rebellious, stubborn, self-centered, egotistical, and took this COVID-19 for granted. Yes, we must pay homage to them too. Yes, so in other words, the entire human race. So join me for just 30 seconds in a moment of silence to our Creator and to the entire human race as we all go through this pandemic called COVID-19. The numbers are not decreasing from last year to this year. Will you be a part of the solution, or will you continue to be a part of the problem? There is help, and they are in the 12 steps. So join me for just 30 seconds of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So what we want to do now, you know that on day 116, the day that I set before you in recovery from COVID-19, as well as other members of my family. And if you go back to the podcast of December the 3rd, you will see what COVID-19 looked like on me, which is why I am sitting before you, sharing my experience, my strength, my hope, my wisdom, my lack of wisdom, my bad decisions, and my bad choices as a result of me contributing to contracting COVID-19 and infecting members of my family. So April the 1st of 2020 was when I sat before you, and now we're celebrating 1 year, but it was December the 3rd that I sat before you with COVID-19 and in recovery. So if you are from Missouri, let me show you what it looked like. I don't look like what I've been through. I was here sitting before you, sweating, no dentures, no makeup, could hardly breathe, could hardly swallow, could hardly taste, could hardly smell. My entire body felt like a giant toothache. And you can see right next to it as I progressed in my recovery that what you see now, you will see that I don't look like what I've been through. Not even from my 31 years in recovery, from alcoholism, drug addiction, and all of the associated attitudes, ideas, and behaviors. Now, surviving and recovering and having been restored to soundness of mind and applying these 12 steps to COVID-19 and the CDC's simple suggestion of washing our hands, wearing a mask, social distancing, contact tracing, getting tested, and getting vaccinated. Yes, even though we heard what they have been saying since last year, some of us did not listen, and that includes me, until such time it hit me and my family. In spite of me having these 12 spiritual principles that I did not apply to COVID-19, which demonstrates how deep our character defects go, how deep our ego is, our stubbornness, our pridefulness, our selfishness, our self-centeredness. in spite of having the information, which is why one day at a time, we can, we will, we must stop its perpetuation, but only if you do your research, only if you listen, only if you apply what you have heard in order to stay in the solution and out of the problem, therefore putting you in one of three categories: the prevention of COVID-19, the intervention of COVID-19, or the restoration of COVID-19. Either you are going to be proactive, reactive, inactive, responsible regarding COVID-19. Only you can answer what category you are in. And so as a result of April the 1st of 2020, now 1 year later, the numbers in just the United States alone are closing in on 600,000 reported. That's in the United States only. And so with Dr. Scott T. Allison's article that says we can benefit from the wisdom of the 12-step programs during the month of April in 2020, when we had our first lockdown or mandate to stay enclosed to stop the perpetuation. But we did not heed, we did not listen. And then it was like 30, maybe 40, but it's close to 600,000 reported deaths. And from what I understand, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But the solutions are in the 12 spiritual principles. And so when we look at what has been done, is being done in terms of the testing, in terms of the vaccination shots, do your homework, ask the questions so you can dispel any rumors, so you can verify the facts, so that you can go back into our history, so that you can see who is taking the shot, who are getting tested, in order to make an objective decision and not based on emotions. Because in recovery from a 12-step program, they say we are emotional human beings, but most of us make bad decisions, bad choices based on emotions. But if we be like Dr. Spock of the Star Trek and detach from the emotions, we can make an objective decision or choice that is the right thing to do. So that's what we're asking, that you do your own research. Get your questions answered so that you can be like me and millions of others who have taken the vaccine shot. Are you still from Missouri? All righty then, let me show you. All right, here is the first shot that I got. Excited about a needle. Woo! Yes.
Here we go, my daughter.
Here we go. That shot was given on February the 6th of 2021. Yes. All righty. All right. And a month or so later, on March the 4th, listen to what she said.
Let's get you a little shot of hope here, my dear.
Yes.
A shot of hope. Did you hear her? And so I've been vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. And let me tell you that from what I understand, from my research, from me asking questions, that the vaccine only decreases the severity of the symptoms should I contract COVID-19 again. Therefore, it will reduce the possibility of me being hospitalized And even more, it will decrease the possibility of me dying from COVID-19. It doesn't say it will prevent me. It doesn't say it stops me from infecting. It says that I won't suffer the severity of the symptoms, possibly not hospitalized and possibly not dying, because they are still in the research process. Man doesn't have the answers, don't have all the answers, but guess what? If I can just stop the severity or decrease the severity of the symptoms, decrease the possibility of me being hospitalized, and decrease the possibility of me of dying, you better believe I'll take that vaccine shot as many times as necessary. That means we have to take off all those other masks of pride, ego. You can't say you're ignorant anymore because the information is out there. Yes, Emmett's time. Yes. In recovery, we say, do you want to save your behind or do you want to save your face? Some of us must die, they say in our 12-step program, in order for some of us to live. And why must some of us die? Because some of us are just too constitutionally incapable of being honest with ourselves. We are not at fault. Some of us seem to have been born that way. That's why some of us must die in order for some of us to live. So if it applies to alcoholism, drug addiction, it can also apply to COVID-19. So I implore you, I beg you, I encourage you to apply these 12 spiritual principles to deal with these physical conditions from a spiritual angle, particularly with COVID-19, in order to save your life, the lives of your loved ones, the lives of your culture, contribute to helping your community, your city, your state, your country. And if we all simultaneously do this, we can, we will, we must stop this devastating perpetuation of COVID-19 and all these other variants. All right, so let me say that I recognized and gave homage to our higher power and also those who are among us in one category or another dealing with this COVID-19. Okay, so before I introduce my sponsors and I introduce the resources and we continue with recovery principle number 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, I want to take this minute to recognize my late first husband, the children, the father of my children, that I shared our fairy tale affair, love affair yesterday, and give homage to him as well. And so as a result of being with him yesterday, surrounded by his children and his grandchildren, my first husband, the love of my life, and the father of my 2 children. God called him, gave him his wings, 11:30 a.m. on March the 31st of 2021. And when I say to God be the glory, no, to God be all the glory. To God be all the glory. A love affair in one way, shape, form, or fashion that lasted over 53 years Who would have ever thought that we will be reunited on the day that God wanted to bring him back home, which also happens to be the day of his late mother's birthday. So, Dwight Kenneth Dockery, I pay homage to you. I thank you. I thank you. And I will forever love you. Yes. And so, you never know what will happen in this thing called life, because we learned that recovery is being prepared for things yet to come. So when we said on February the 14th of 1975, to death do us part, only God knew that we will hold up to that vow on March the 31st of 2021. I also want to say to my daughter, Kenesha Treasure Edwina Dockery, who obviously received a characteristic from her mother, from her grandmother, of being a caregiver. She sacrificed and dedicated the last 4 years, a lot of the other years, but the last 4 years of specifically taking care of her daddy. She was a daddy's little girl, and so was I, so I understand. But my hat goes off to my daughter, Kenesha Treasure Edwina Dockery, because she obeyed, she kept her promise, and she can hold her head up high with tears flowing of joy, of missing, but won't have and shouldn't have any regrets, because she did what she was commanded to do, what she was given strength to do, and what she promised her daddy. So, Kenesha Treasure Edwina Dockery, your nana and your mother are so proud of you. All right, so let's get the step in, okay? So let me acknowledge my sponsors, all right? All right, so let's go here and put them on the screen, okay? Here. So our first sponsor is Free to Hope, LLC, Patchwork of Delaware. Patchwork Human Services with Ebony Marjorie. We also want to recognize Levante M. Dorsey and Associates, and Academy of Peace, Dr. J. Macklin, Crafty Crab Seafood Restaurant, where I had my 31st celebration in recovery, and they are located in Wilmington, Delaware. To the 1212 Corporation, where I've been going to my 12-step meeting for over 30 years here in Wilmington, Delaware. It is a safe haven for people who are recovering from substance abuse, mental illness, or just need some peer support to get through any and everything one day at a time, right? We also want to acknowledge Women Do Haul Transportation Services. Mr. C's Barbershop, Mark Cooper, is my barber. He is responsible for my crown. This outfit that I have on is from Morgan's of Delaware, and my Afrocentric attire is from Lady T at Morgan's of Delaware. Jewelry that I wear sometimes is by Catherine Butler. Outfits come sometimes from Jones Accessory of Philadelphia. And every morning I tune into the Morning Wake Up with Ambassador Tamika Strickland. Yes, if you want words of inspiration, consolation, motivation, all centered around spirituality, Tune in every morning at 4:30 to 4:45, Monday through Friday, with Morning Wake Up with Ambassador Tamika Strickland. Last but not least, until you become a sponsor, is Divine Light Recovery Center and Supportive Housing. Divine Light lines up with Dr. Carl Jong, Dr. Bob, and Bill W. when they all met years ago and realized that people with the disease of alcoholism need divine providence, divine intervention that will lead them to divine light. And who would have thought but God that I would be working for over 12 years with this organization called Divine Light. I told you, you never know what you will be prepared for. So if you want to be a sponsor, please help me to become syndicated. That's what somebody said to me earlier. They was like, Edwina, you're doing such a good job. You've been on, you're getting all these likes and things, and you're on YouTube, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. You should become syndicated. But guess what? If it's God's will, I will. And I know that he knows that I am ready to do whatever he calls me to do, because he yet prepares me and continues to order my steps. So if you can help in any way, shape, form, or fashion to help me get this free information out to as many people as possible, please become one of my sponsors or make a donation so I can upgrade my equipment, be on more platforms that cost money, okay? So I can use your help to save one life, one family, one culture, one city, one state, one country, yes, around the world. So please be mindful, because there, by the grace of God, you too can be a part of the solution and no longer a part of the problem. All right, so they were my sponsors. So now I want to acknowledge my resources, right? And as I shared with you about Dr. Scott T. Allison. And he wrote that article in Psychology Today on March the 31st, how we as a society can benefit from the wisdom of the 12-step programs, using 7 points from the Al-Anon Anonymous approach. So please look up Dr. Scott T. Allison and extract that article and focus on the 7 points of recovery. Jason Waller, I use his template, his overview, his synopsis, his narratives, his questions, right? As he breaks down each and all of the 12 spiritual principles from his perspective, his resources, right? Interjecting his experience, strength, and hope and wisdom so that you can see the benefit that can be achieved and obtained by learning and applying and practicing these 12 spiritual principles. All right, so let me briefly go through them. But guess what? Because I'm about repetition, right? So if you want to see any of my podcasts, please do so. But I'm going to let you know what the 12 spiritual principles are, because you might have heard it, but I want you to listen. 1, we admitted we were powerless over COVID-19 and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power or powers greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and that only means soundness of mind, right? So we have 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves, right? And 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all defects of character. And recovery principle number 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed. And became willing to make amends to them all. That's what it should say, right? And then we have recovery principle number 9, which is the step we are on. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Right? So let's continue with the last 2. Recovery principle number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will and the power to carry it out. And the last one is recovery principle number 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others regarding COVID-19 and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Okay? So at this time, I want to just give you maybe 10 minutes of April the 7th, part 4 of my podcast, right? So that you can see the before, during, and now the after of the beginning up until now. And I will be focusing on what we're talking about today. So you get a little bit of the past and the present. So make sure that you listen as I describe recovery principle number 9, and then we're going to go into Jason Waller's continued narrative of recovery principle number 9 as he applied it to Alcoholics Anonymous, but then we're going to come back and apply it to COVID-19 Anonymous. So listen, okay? Has made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, then we'll know what type of amends to make, whether direct amends or indirect amends, because the whole purpose of being free. I don't want to go through life looking over my shoulder. I don't want to go through life walking across the street when I see somebody I owe money to. No, I need to make them amends. Did I steal your money? I need to give you your money back. Do I need to change the behavior? Because if I tell you the truth, I might get my dentures knocked out. No, I'm going to change the behavior because it's going to cause harm to you or me or others. So you make direct amends or indirect amends. Why? For the purpose of gaining spiritual freedom. Because we don't want to give anything or anybody, I know I don't, to make me go back to underneath that park car. You're not going to get it. Okay. Recovery principle number 10 says continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Similar to recovery principle number 4, we identified what those I'm going to stop that,
are, as well as those
and I want to again focus more on recovery principle number 9 that we are on, where it says made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And so we know with Jason Waller's breakdown, he identified 3 types of amends: direct amends, taking personal responsibility to people, taking personal responsibility for our actions and confronting the people who we like to reconcile with. That's direct amends. Indirect amends is finding ways to repair damage that cannot be reversed or undone by doing things like volunteering and helping others. And then you have the living amends, when you show others as well as yourself that you have made a genuine lifestyle change and are making a commitment to yourself and those that you have hurt that you will and have discarded your previous destructive behaviors. He also went on to talk about, we, covered this in our previous podcast, right? The three auras of the ninth step that are associated with making amends: restoration, resolution, and restitution. Restoration means bringing something back to its former state, usually things that have been damaged. This can mean restoring our reputations and even restoring trust in a relationship. Resolution, as recovering addicts, means we likely have past experiences that plague us or disturb us in some way. Finding a resolution to these problems means coming up with answers and solutions and laying them to rest. And restitution, as it relates to the ninth step, is the act of returning something material or abstract to its rightful owner. All right. So we were able to talk about that, and we were able to hear what they were saying. And now I want to continue with the narrative from Jason Waller's point of view in dealing with alcoholism and drug addiction. And again, once we do that, we are going to go back and apply all of this to COVID-19. But I just believe in giving you the foundation, giving you the preparatory stages of why and how we need to do these steps and the benefits we will get from them. Okay. So on the ninth step, it says the next section that says when to do so would cause harm. Okay. And I will say that we need to, I'm going to read this. And if I've done it before, that's okay. But here it is, this section, before I go to the next section. Life is complicated and not always straightforward or black and white. Therefore, some step 9 amends may take a little creativity and patience. Working this step should never lead to further harm of others. Okay. There may be times when approaching another person directly or seeking to provide restitution could be more painful or harmful for that person. For example, there may be a situation where the person or people we have harmed are not aware of what we did, and learning about it might possibly harm them even more. Or there could be situations that were complicated by other addicts or accusations of stealing more than just money. There are so many kinds of situations, and they all need to be taken into consideration on an individual basis. Again, our sponsor can help us decide how best to handle each one. They can help us check our motives for wanting to tell people about our addiction or for apologizing, right? You may want to ask yourself if that person really needs to know. And if so, what good purpose would be served by sharing such information? When discussing our amends list with our sponsors, if we are open-minded, we can start to think about these kinds of situations in ways we haven't thought about them before. In fact, we usually discover that what we first thought was the obvious method of making amends might not be right after all. The next section says, ninth step spiritual principles. Always a good day for humble pie. This is a quote by John J. McCloy. Humility leads to strength and not to weakness. It is the highest form of self-respect to admit mistakes and make amends for them. Humility is the freedom from pride or arrogance and having the quality or state of being humble. In the 9th step, we will focus on the spiritual principles of humility, forgiveness, and love. We gain humility as a result of taking a good look at the damage we did to others and ourselves and accepting responsibility for it. After acknowledging to ourselves what we have done, we take responsibility for making it right. There is nothing quite like experiencing increased humility while making amends in your 9th step and recognizing the self-empowerment and self-love that comes with it. While doing our amends and experiencing being forgiven, we begin to see the value in extending it to others. It feels good to practice forgiveness and just let go of resentment. Positive reinforcement is a great motivator to practice the spiritual principle of forgiveness as much as possible. By forgiving others, we start to recognize our own humanness, and it gives us the capacity to be less judgmental than we were in the past. We become aware that since we usually mean well, and we can extend that belief to others, it is interesting to note that when someone does actually harm, It's interesting to note that when someone does actually harm us, we have learned that holding resentments only serves to rob us of our peace and serenity. Did you hear that? It's interesting to note that when someone does actual harm to us, we have learned that holding resentments only serves to rob us of our peace and serenity. So we tend to forgive them sooner rather than later. It's good stuff. Jason Waller continues, practicing the spiritual principle of love. Practicing the spiritual principle of love is something we have been doing throughout our recovery just by staying clean and sober. By step 9, we have eliminated many of the destructive attitudes, perspectives, and feelings we used to have, which makes room for love in our lives. As we become filled with love, we find the need to share it in the form of nurturing our relationships, building new ones, and by selflessly sharing our recovery, our time, and our resources with others in need. Guilt and shame are the unnecessary chains that bind us to our past. By practicing these spiritual principles, we can break those chains and achieve the freedom from our addiction that we have yearned for. I'm sure you have heard that the steps are written in a specific order for a reason. That reason is that each step provides the spiritual preparation we will need for the following steps. This is so blatantly apparent in the 9th step. Never in a million years would we ever have imagined during our using days that we would one day be able to sit down with the people we have harmed and make direct amends. This would not be possible without the spiritual preparation we received from the previous steps. If we had not done the work in the first 8 steps, we wouldn't now have a foundation on which to stand while we make our amends. If we had not developed a relationship with a higher power, we wouldn't now have the faith and trust that we definitely need to work step 9. If we had not done our 4th and 5th steps, we would probably still be so confused about our own personal responsibility. We wouldn't have specifically, we wouldn't know specifically what we are making amends for. If we hadn't developed humility in the 6th and 7th steps, we would likely approach our amends with self-righteousness, blame, or anger. Our 8th step list was our practical preparation for working step 9. As we go into this step, we must remember to stay connected to our higher power and have faith that the previous 8 steps have prepared us to work the 9th step. Now, this section says 9th step questions and guidelines, as outlined by Jason Waller in Breaking Down the Steps. Okay, let's see how much we can get through with this. It says, there are a lot of fearful feelings before, during, and after making amends in the 9th step. While working step 9, it's really important to understand that the way things feel is not necessarily the way things are. Because we are feeling afraid, we assume that this means we truly have something to fear. But this is not fact. To prepare for this step, it's a good idea to let go of all our expectations about how our amends will or should turn out. Here are some questions to help guide you through working step 9. 1, how is making amends committing to a continuous process of change? 2, do I have fears about making amends? Am I worried that someone will take revenge or reject me? 3, how does the 9th step require a new level of surrender to the program? 4, what about my financial amends? Do I have faith that the God of my understanding will ensure I have what I need, even though I am sacrificing to make amends? 5, why doesn't it matter how my amends are received? 6, how will other addicts, my sponsor, and my higher power be sources of strength in this process? 7, which names on my 8-step list are complicated by circumstances? Do I owe any amends that might have serious consequences if I made them? What are they? 8, what behaviors do I need to amend? Let me see, I got these numbers right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. 9, what are my immediate plans for making amends to myself? Do I have any long-range goals that might also fit as amends to myself? What are they? What can I do to follow through? 10, have I accepted responsibility for the harm I caused and for repairing that harm? 11, what experiences have I had that led me to see the harm I caused more clearly? How has that contributed to an increase in my humility? And 12, what are the benefits to me of practicing the spiritual principle of forgiveness? What are some situations in which I've been able to practice these principles? So you see, we're going to stop there. But those are the types of questions that are outlined in Jason Waller's overview and breaking down of the steps, and also covered in Dr. Scott T. Allison's 7 points from Al-Anon Anonymous perspective, okay? And so we know that we want to be set free from recovery, emerge empowered, to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. And the benefit of doing recovery principle number 9, it eliminates all excuses of not being able to make the amends, because they give you certain circumstances and certain examples and specific directions on what type of amends to make, so that we can make amends to them all, except so would injure them or others or even you. So you see, when we embrace these 12 spiritual principles and we're going to apply them to COVID-19, you better believe I'm making amends to my family. And one of the amends I made was with my ex-husband and the father of my children, because he was the 78-year-old and the second person in the family to contract COVID-19. Yes. As young as 2 years old to 78 years old. And putting them on my 8th step list and now being able to make amends to them is a beautiful thing. And yesterday, during the transition with my ex-husband and the father of my children, my son and my daughter were side by side with their daddy. My daughter said to my son, "Please forgive Daddy. Please forgive our daddy. Please forgive him." My ex-husband and their father heard her say that, and a tear rolled down his eyes. Even though my son was unable to say the words, I'm sure he knew that his son was there. And so you never know when the day will come that you will get to make amends to those you have harmed in your past. All right? So let's stop there, because y'all know I'm getting ready to go to my 7:30 meeting. As a matter of fact, I have to pick up my buddy Chris because he needs a ride. But if it's God's will that we are joined tomorrow for day 118 as we celebrate year number 1, yes, of the Free to Hope presents the 12 steps applied to COVID-19. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. continue to order my steps. So on behalf of my sponsors, my resources, and our Creator, until we meet again, if it's God's will, wear a mask, wash your hands, social distance, contact tracing, get tested, and get vaccinated. And be safe. So I'm going to close out with the love of my life, my ex-husband and the father of my children, Dwight Kenneth Dockery, and I'm going to show you that picture. All right.